All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Friday, November 15th, and this is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson, along with Jake Jimerson. As always, we are gearing up for the Texas-Arkansas game. We have our final predictions. We will give you those for the Texas game, and we'll make some bold predictions, whether they're a couple of like prop bets, how many touchdowns is Quinn Ewers going to have, or how many fumbles is the defense going to cause, things of that nature. We're going to talk a little big noon controversy as we go around the NCAA, and we predict a game per game basis of some of the biggest games around the country, and also any teams that might be on upset alert watch. I'm Tanner Carlson. That's Jake. Jake, you have a big weekend coming up. You may not be able to watch as many games as you normally would otherwise, especially in that first noon slate of games, because you are going to be in Fayetteville. Any message to any Texas fans that might be watching that may also be in Fayetteville?
If you're going to be at the game, my handle is on the screen for X. Hit me up. If we're at the stadium same time, we can try to meet up and talk some Texas football. I should be there well before kickoff and in the stadium and around. I am going to be, like you said, it's going to be hard for me to watch much football other than Texas, just because I'm going to the game. Then I got about a 4-hour track back home after. I should be able to catch some of the evening games. Luckily, with this being the SEC bye week for all the other SEC teams, where they all play an FCS school or somehow a even worse version of an FCS school, which is a god-awful FBS team, such as New Mexico State. So it's a good week to be traveling and going to a game, but I will be missing out on watching. But I would much rather be going to the Texas game,
without a doubt,
getting to see this team play in person, and hopefully being as impressed as I have been watching them on TV all year.
We live in a world where you can record as many games and go back and watch as many games as you want to watch. So we live in a very generous world. Anytime people are like, "Oh, I missed my calling back in the 70s. I wish I lived." No, you don't. No, you don't. You couldn't record 5 football games at the same time, go back later and watch them whenever you wanted back in the 70s. You couldn't do that. Don't give me that. You didn't have electricity the way you have electricity now and technology to watch and just binge and gorge yourself in college football each and every Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of college football I've watched this year is more than normal, which is saying something, but I've probably averaged at least 12 hours a day on Saturday watching college football.
I mean, dude, I've been watching, like, Ashton Genty has given me a reason to stay up at midnight and watch, a Mountain West football game just to see if he pops off for 4 touchdowns. Like, there's
BYU Utah last week. I was up until 1:30 watching that game. And then I was too pumped up and ended up staying up until like 4 after that game. Just ended up watching highlights, then went down a YouTube rabbit hole watching a bunch of videos, and then I was up until 4.
Yeah, it happens.
But it's okay. It's a Saturday. I work Monday through Friday.
That's why college football is played on Saturdays, boys. Jake, real quick, let's jump into the Texas-Arkansas game. Any final predictions? Any final thoughts in terms of these two matching up against one another?
Yeah, I mean, I've looked at this game over and over. My final thoughts and kind of predictions, and I've kind of talked about this throughout the week, is I do think Arkansas might hit a couple big plays against this defense. I think the defense is due to give up a big play or two and kind of have to make some adjustments in the game. And actually, the defense faced some adversity because the defense hasn't really faced any self-inflicted adversity this year. All the adversity they have faced has been because the offense or the special teams put them in that position. They haven't had to face anything themselves where they're getting beat early in a game. So I think Arkansas comes out and scores some points in the first half, but I think Quinn Ewers is going to have another huge game. I think he's going to, maybe not to the level of Florida, 5 touchdowns in the first half, but I think he could have 5 touchdowns in this game and have back-to-back 5+ touchdown games. And that's my boldest prediction from this weekend.
I like that. And I'm on the same wavelength in terms of Quinn repeating and continuing his and stacking performances the way we saw, last week against Florida, going into this week against Arkansas with a very bad secondary that should be susceptible to big plays through the air. I think if you force Arkansas to drive the length of the field, if the special teams, whether that's the punt game or the offense, not committing turnovers, if Arkansas is on their side of the field to start possessions, whether that be at the 20, anything inside the 30-yard line, anything inside their own 30-yard line, and you're going to make them drive at least 70 yards, I think Arkansas can maybe manage 10 points against this Texas defense.
We're going to have a big disagreement on our final score predictions, by the way.
Probably. And that's okay, because I think if you force Arkansas to drive the ball and not rely on big plays, then they have nothing in terms of an advantage over this defense. Now, if the offense is going to give, commit a turnover, if Quinn throws a couple interceptions, one interception ends inside, Texas's 40 or around the 50-yard line, Arkansas can hit you for a big play and score in one or two plays. I'm not saying that's not possible. I'm saying if the offense plays cleanly, I don't see this Arkansas offense having very much success against this Texas defense.
Yeah, I'm just going to go and jump to my final score prediction, unless you have any other thoughts.
Other than Quinn having like a 5, is that your like?
Actually, I have a breakout defensive player for this game. Now that I'm thinking about it,
let's hear
I think Leona Lafau might be the MVP of the defense in this game. He's been steadily getting more snaps than David Benda now. David Benda has not seen the field that much in recent history, and I don't think we've really clarified. That's just happened. All of a sudden, David Benda went from getting almost all the snaps to Leona Lafau is getting almost all the snaps.
I agree.
And how special is this linebacking group going to be next year? Just a real quick. Oh, I just spilt water everywhere. I'm gonna text my wife and see if she'll come down.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Floodgate.
Flood.
No, that's actually Watergate. That's actually Watergate.
Yeah. I'm going to say my final thing here that I'm actually going to run upstairs and see if my wife can help me clean this real quick.
Leona Lafau.
Yeah, Leona, thank you. I just, as you can tell by the redness in my face, I just completely lost thought process.
I want to see it. Put your webcam on it if you can. Are you capable of doing that?
Not really, with how my webcam is mounted.
That's disappointing.
But
you're cheating the people an excellent source of content, Jake.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think Leona Lafau is a big game. I think he forces a fumble. I think he recovers that fumble. I think he gets a sack in this game, and I think he ends with a few tackles for loss. I think he's going to have his breakout game where all of a sudden people go, "Oh yeah, this guy's been getting most of the snaps." And then I'm going to let you finish your thoughts, and then I'll get my final score when I get back.
Oh, Jake's water broke. That's adorable. All right, let's go ahead and give a Texas prediction for me. Look, you heard me mention it. I definitely think that this defense is going to have its way with Arkansas as long as the offense or special teams doesn't put the defense in a bad position. I think that's fair to say, and I think the numbers would back me up and me feeling that way. I'm not saying it's going to happen that way, but I do think it could be that way. I think Isaiah Bond is going to have a big game. I'm looking at Isaiah Bond as the go-to guy for the Texas offense. I think Isaiah Bond is going to go for multiple touchdowns, whether that be through rushing, whether that be through receiving. But I think Isaiah Bond finds the end zone at least one or two, or at least 2 to 3 times. And then on the defense side of the ball, I'm going to shout out Sadir Mitchell for the play that he made a week ago against Florida. I think he doubles down on that, and I think Sadir Mitchell is going to end up with a sack in this game. Yep. You heard me, folks. The guy who was in the doghouse for however long he was in the doghouse for, Sadir Mitchell, sack in the game, and the Texas Longhorns will thrive on defense, and then the offense, I think they're going to put up some big points through the air game. I wanted this game to scare me more going into this game than it currently is, Jake. And that in itself is kind of scary. I'm kind of scaring myself in the fact that I'm not as scared going into this game as I wanted to be. Because really throughout the entire season, Jake, you heard me. This was my like red alert game. Like Arkansas at Arkansas is not a fun matchup for Texas. Going into this game, for whatever reason, maybe it's the performance they put on against Florida last week. Maybe it's just the way Arkansas season has gone. I don't feel that way as much as I did earlier on in the season. And that is scaring me more than the game itself.
Yeah, you talked about Sadir Mitchell being in the doghouse. I might be in the doghouse at home with my wife having to clean up the mess I just made. But we're actually gonna
you got a very comfortable couch in your basement where you're at right now in your mom's house, right?
We do have a very comfortable couch down here. I might be sleeping on it tonight. But with you kind of mentioning early in the season, I was kind of the one being confident in the defense, saying they're the best defense in the country over and over to you, as you kind of had a little bit more doubts. This is how the turntables moment, if you will, because I think Texas is going to give up points in this game. I think they're going to win this game handedly at the end, but I think it's going to be tight for the first half. I think I'm going to feel a little uncomfortable in the stands there in Fayetteville. I think there's going to be a lot of horns down directed my way from Arkansas fans, and then that will slowly quiet down as the third quarter trickles on.
I need a fit
into the
check.
Fourth.
I need a fit check before you go into that stadium, by the way.
That can be arranged, but I think Texas wins this game. My final score prediction, and this is going to be a little bit of a crazy score when you think about how Texas games have gone this year. So I may end up looking stupid, but I think they win this game 45-27.
Okay.
Is my final score. And I think Arkansas is going to have 21 of those points at halftime.
Okay.
I think it'll be like a 24-21 game at half.
Something close at half.
And then Texas will break away.
Okay. I haven't put a ton of thought in what my final to be. I think it's going to be, here's I'm just going to go out. I'm going to say 38-13. I think Texas is going to handle this team. And I think Arkansas might be lucky to manage 2 field goals out of it. But yeah, I'm going to go 38-13 as my final for the Texas Longhorns winning this thing. And I think honestly, it's going to have a kind of a reminiscent feeling of Florida, except not as high scoring for the offense.
I think you're just, we'll see how we look on Sam. Maybe we both look dumb. Maybe Arkansas just wins this game, but I think you're underrating Arkansas's offense. I really do think they're the best offense Texas will have gone against this year. And I think by a pretty wide margin.
You're probably not wrong, but I think the defense is, I think I'm putting all my faith and all my cards.
We're role swapping here.
Yeah,
we are.
You can give me all the warning signs that you want to. I'm gonna fly right by them, Jake. I
still think this is the best defense in the country. Even making this prediction,
as many yellow lights as you want to. I'm gonna hit on the gas and I'm gonna try to blow through that yellow light before it turns red.
Yeah, and I still ultimately think this is the best team in the country. I stand by that. I haven't changed my mind on this defense. It just feels like even the best defenses have a week where it gets away from a little bit, and this seems like a spot for it to happen. Where you're going against a very explosive offense. You haven't given up very many explosive plays, but you also haven't gone against the most explosive offenses. And maybe it opens up a little bit in the first half, and then you adjust, you tighten things up, and then you kind of suffocate him in the second half.
In the words of Michael Taff, I think we're the best secondary in the country, and I would double down on that sentiment, as well as just saying overall defense in general.
They have been by every metric, especially in the passing game. Every metric, they have been the number one defense in the country.
It is a 13.5 point spread, Jake. I have Texas covering that spread. Your final, I believe, does.
It has them. Yep,
okay.
It has them covering.
Okay. Yep.
45-27. That's 18 points. So that's by my accountant math.
Hey, you are way more experienced in that field than I am. 5-star Texas commit Jamie French is visiting the University of Florida this Saturday. It's not because he's necessarily reconsidering his commitment to Texas, and especially after that Texas-Florida game. He's not like, I don't think I want to play for Texas. I want to go play for the Gators after that incredible, just daring performance they put on in Austin. No, he's going to the game with his high school quarterback, who the Florida is trying to flip from Florida State. And Texas isn't too concerned with this.
Yeah, no, I from what I've read from recruiting sources, they're not really worried about this being a flip, but at the same time, it is noteworthy. It is a Texas commit that is making an official visit for French. It's not unofficial. He is making an official visit to UF. He will get the whole treatment from Florida. So it is worth mentioning because they have committed to Napier staying. DJ Lagway is, I know Arch is a very attractive prospect as well, but you have DJ Lagway who's looked the part as well. So it is at least worth mentioning. If anything comes, if we don't talk about this again, assume nothing's going to happen. If we do, that's when you can kind of start at least looking at that panic button. Right now it's stored away in storage. It's nowhere.
Well, I just want to scare some Texas fans while I'm at it. I mean, this is his best friend in high school, and they're going together. And sometimes that
all committed to different places.
Hey, I'm just saying. Sometimes that best friend bond. They go on the whole trip together. They have a great time. They make lasting memories forever.
The Texas fan scares ourselves enough over things that shouldn't be all the time.
I'm obviously not taking this very seriously, people, if y'all can't tell. So, all right, Jake, let's go ahead. Let's go across the country here. And let's start off with some noon games. And speaking of noon, there has been a controversy going around the entire college football landscape of this big noon kickoff, stealing some of the best games and their situation with the Big Ten. Jake, you can explain it maybe a little bit better than I can. I understand it as Fox has a contract with the Big Ten, and Fox has that noon slate of games essentially wrapped up. And whenever the Big Ten only has 4 teams to choose from, and one of those teams is on the West Coast, which they would have to play at 9 a.m. to play at noon, it makes it a little bit more difficult to have a variety of games. So that's why you've got Ohio State playing at noon essentially every single game. That's why you've got Penn State playing at noon essentially every single game. You could probably explain it a little bit better than I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did explain it pretty well. At the end of the day, it just comes down to how contracts work. Fox has a deal with the Big Ten. They're going to get to choose their game. Their slot is that noon slot, or 11 o'clock for us Central Time folks, which, by the way, is the best time zone to watch football. But they're not going to select Oregon. You have a very top-heavy conference. You're not going to select Oregon unless they're not playing in Eugene. And then really your choices from that are Indiana, which is not exactly a ratings driver. Even this year, it's just how it works. It's just like in the NFL. People are going to watch the Cowboys, even if they suck. It's going to be the most watched team. And Ohio State is always going to outview in Indiana. And that works out with them this week because you got Ohio State and Indiana. That's going to get a ratings boost because people who are interested in Indiana but haven't watched them play this year, that's going to be a lot of people's first time watching them play this year. But it comes down to just, you're going to choose when you're a network, when you're a company, you're going to make the choices that are going to be the best for your company. Fox does not care about Ohio State fan. And this is where you can argue whether it's right or wrong. But when it comes to a business decision, Fox is going to do what's best for their business, which is playing Ohio State, which would be, if a Michigan was better, it would help out because then you could just pick one of them. But you have a Big Ten that's not only extremely top heavy this year, but is really only has one marquee brand. Maybe Oregon could fit in there, but we've already talked about the issue with their location and that noon time slot. You really only have one marquee brand to choose from on a consistent basis, and that is Ohio State. And that's why pretty much every Ohio State game has been at noon. I believe their last 6 games of the season will all have been at noon. And I get the frustrations from the fans. I'm not saying this is right by Fox. It isn't. And this is where the networks need to come together, meet, and figure out a better solution for the fans. Because you are robbed of seeing Ohio State, and all these colleges are spending all these money on these LED lights, on fireworks, on all this stuff that is directed towards night games and to put a spotlight on your college. And just like when Texas was in the Big 12 and not getting many night games, and you weren't getting to get to see the drone show, you weren't getting to see the orange smoke at night being let out with the LED lights and the whole show. And now you're getting to see that more this year, being in the SEC. I completely understand the frustration from Ohio State fans, and hopefully this is something the networks can meet, whether that be Fox getting a later slot or Fox subcontracting out these games. I don't know exactly how the legalities work around all that, but there's got to be a way to fix this to where it works for the fans too. Because at the end of the day, and I'm stealing from Josh Pate here with what he said, but it's very obvious. The media companies are worth a ton of money. These games are worth a ton of money. They're worth a ton of money because of the fans at the end of the day, because of the sponsorships which come from people watching it. So
Yep.
you need to make sure that you don't forget about your base in all of this. And I know you're still getting ratings at the noon, but it's very obvious with all the conversation around it that people want some of these games at night. And I really want to see that change, because seeing Penn State play Ohio State at 11 was a crime in that
it
game.
was,
We
and
were
it just
robbed of
didn't.
a whiteout night game.
Well, I was yawning in the first quarter, drinking my morning coffee. I was still waking up. I was still trying to like just get the day going. So I'm not as pumped up, and you can only imagine how the fans feel and whatnot. And so, here's the big argument too: is well, if that's the time slot, and that's where these games are, and the ratings are the ratings, because guess what? Historically, college football has had their games scheduled according to the matchup. Whether that the noon games have been typically the lower tier. Okay, you can kind of do your afternoon chores, keep an eye on the game. Afternoon games, you want to, maybe a 25 ranked team is playing a 15th ranked team, and that's kind of your 3:30 slot, if you will. And then obviously your marquee premier primetime games have been at night. That has historically how college football has worked. Fox found this little noon spot and was like, well, why is no one using this real estate, essentially? And so that's kind of where this whole big noon idea came from. And guess what? People are watching. Guess what? People are watching Penn State and Ohio State. Also, on the flip side of that argument, I'd be watching Ohio State, Penn State, the number 3 versus number 4 team. If it was started at midnight, I would stay up and watch that game. It wouldn't matter what time it is. So Fox, just figure something out that works well for the fans. Like have a special night game, 2-3 times a year, and you can kind of compete with some of the other networks or something. I don't know what that's going to take, but like that's a whole other thing too. Is like I would watch Georgia, Alabama play if their kickoff started at 3 a.m. I would wake up and set an alarm and watch it. Like I'm going to watch it regardless. Like these fans are going to watch it regardless of what time you put it on. So that's kind of the other flip side argument to it as well. So let's go ahead, get into these games, unless you have any other closing remarks on that. All right, let's go ahead, jump into it. Speaking of big noon kickoff, I think this is a perfect segue. Utah at Colorado. Big noon kickoff will be there. This will be the where the Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson broadcast will be in Boulder, Colorado. Utah at Colorado. Utah just coming off of a heartbreaker in the Holy War last week against BYU. Colorado with their playoff lives in their own hands. All they got to do is win out, and they have a chance to actually, if they win out, they are in the college football playoffs.
Yeah, we go off the rails sometimes on this show, and I'm gonna go off the rail for a second here. What happened to our boy Gus Johnson? I don't know if they're sedating him before games, or if someone told him you're too excited during games, which if someone did say that, they should be fired. But his broadcasting has been awful this year, and he's typically someone that I really enjoy. And
I love Gus Johnson, but this year, dude, in the first quarter of the Purdue Ohio State game, there was a touchdown, and if I could play the broadcast, I would, but it's literally this, that if you want to hear it. And it is a seam route caught and a touchdown, Ohio State. That, I shit you not, like that's what it is.
No, that you might have sounded more excited than
maybe
him.
Yeah.
The scoop and score, which I don't care if it's a blowout, it's a scoop and score. Gus Johnson a year ago, 2 years ago would have gone crazy, and then this year it sounds like he's been sedated. That's the only way I can say it.
It honestly feels like, and maybe he is sick. Maybe I don't want to make assumptions, but maybe he's not well. I don't know. Maybe his health isn't great, but it almost seems as though to me, he's kind of sticking it to the man in terms of someone higher up, one of the executives, one of the producers said, hey, can we just tone it down a little bit? We don't need to be excited every single play of every single game, especially in blowouts. And now he's like, all right, you want tone down? I'll give you tone down. And that's kind of what it's giving off, in my opinion.
Well, I'd rather him go the other way and get overly excited about every single play, literally. 'Cause I bring back Gus Johnson, the real Gus Johnson. This is a clone that was genetically
the real
engineered
Gus
to be the
Johnson,
exact
please
opposite.
stand up.
Yes. But Utah, Colorado. I had to mention that because it's just been bad this year, and someone I normally like. I think Colorado's going to win this game. Colorado has a decent defense. I know Utah was frisky last week with BYU. I actually think Colorado would probably beat BYU right now, which feels weird to say because I've been not on the Colorado train. But they have a good defense and they have playmakers on offense. And when you're in the Big 12, that's enough. You don't need to have a great offensive line, which they do not. But Shadir Sanders is a very good college quarterback that is explosive. And then Travis Hunter is probably the best player in the country. And I think that can carry you against a team like Utah, who has really been the disappointment of the season. Maybe not in all of college football. I'd say that goes to Florida State, but I'd put Utah right up in there in those top 3 most disappointing teams in the country. So I like Colorado to win this. I like them to cover and make a little bit of a statement.
I don't know why I keep having this feeling, and maybe it was because I had Utah winning the Big 12 at the beginning of the year, and I just haven't really gotten that out of my brain yet. I don't know what's triggering me to constantly, now that Utah is disappointed, now I'm like, ooh, now they can be a spoiler. Now that they lowered their expectations and they're not going to win the Big 12, they're still good enough to beat teams that are currently in it, and they can play spoiler. That's not really how it works, especially when teams are worse than they're supposed to be. They typically are that team. And so my brain is consistently, it's been screaming, take Utah, ruin Colorado's season and take Utah. I'm pretty sure I took Utah against BYU to do the exact same thing. I'm pretty sure I picked Utah to upset multiple teams since they've kind of fallen off the cliff a little bit, and they haven't done it. So I'm not going to get burned. I'm going to take Colorado in this game. If it was at Utah, I probably would fall into that same trap and take Utah.
Utah is a different team at home, to be fair. If this was at Utah, I would definitely be more hesitant, especially with the spread. But it's not. It's in Boulder. It's going to be rocking, and I think they'll roll.
Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Rocking and rolling in Colorado. Dion's place.
In Boulder.
In Boulder, yeah.
Rocking
and rolling
in
Boulder. Yeah, that was awful. All right. Let's go ahead and talk Tennessee at Georgia. Number 7, Volunteers taking on Georgia. Jake, this is the game of the week by a long shot. This is going to have big-time implications on the playoff situation in the scenario moving ahead. Georgia at home, 10-point favorites over Tennessee. I don't know if I love that spread. Over under at 48.5. Here's my take on it. Georgia typically doesn't lose 2 games in a row. They also typically don't lose at home. Do I think Tennessee matches up very well against Georgia? I absolutely do. I think Tennessee's defense could dominate Georgia's offense. I think Tennessee's defense, as long as they make Carson Beck uncomfortable, which it seems like that's a very easy thing to do this season, Tennessee could win this game. But I think if Georgia and their defense plays the way they did, and they have the same game plan that they had against Texas, and Walker and that defensive line can get pressure on Emilavia, then they should be able to cause those same issues that that Texas had against Tennessee, that Texas had against Georgia. So as long as if they can manipulate and duplicate that performance that Georgia had in Austin for Tennessee, they should win this game because it's almost the exact same game plan. But I do think Tennessee's defense is going to give Georgia's offense a lot of trouble. And if Georgia can maybe get it inside field position and win the field position battle, I would give Georgia the advantage. A 10-point advantage? Absolutely not. I would bet a confident amount of money that Tennessee covers that spread.
I'm going to bet that Georgia covers. I think Tennessee has one avenue to win this game, and that is dominating Georgia's offensive line enough to where their anemic offense does enough to win. We talk about what Tennessee's defense is going to be able to do against Georgia's offense. What about what Georgia's defense is going to do to this offense? They have been held scoreless multiple times in the first half this year. Multiple times. Unless they are just able to find something in the run game against Georgia, which, by the way, Nico might not even play in this game.
I've heard reports that he's very likely to play.
Well, I had read something today that said that they were not as sure now.
Okay.
So maybe at least up in the air. And if he is playing, is he playing healthy? If he is playing, does it even matter? He has not been a stud this year. They were studs against Kent State.
Oh, really? Wow.
Against NC State, who we thought was a decent team at the time. But in the SEC, they're one of the worst offensive teams in the conference. If you just look at their points for compare in conference play, they've scored 147 points in conference play with 6 games played. Texas has 160 with a game less played. Texas A&M has 140 more points than Tennessee just in conference. If you look at Tennessee on the year, they have 338 points.
Well, that's because they put up 90 points in their first non-conference games.
Yeah, but the only, the funny thing is the only team that has more points than them in conference play or on the season is Ole Miss. But then they drop much lower, or actually, no, Texas has more as well with 1 game less played. But when you go into conference play, they're towards the bottom quarter. They're down there with an OU. And at the end of the day, Tennessee has one really good win this year. That was against an Alabama team who was not playing very good football at the time, mind you, and that was at Tennessee. This is on the road. This is Georgia being challenged with a culture game, and Kirby Smart when they get and they're not being underdogs by the line, but Kirby still has all the ammunition as if they were this week.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're coming off a game in which they were dominated, and I just can't see that happening. And I may be wrong, and maybe Tennessee finds something on offense, but I think Georgia's going to have to score 13 points to win this game. If they score 13 points, they might cover or at least get to the 10-point spread, and it be a push.
Are you pushing the under?
I'm going 16-3 Texas, and yes, or Georgia, and 16-3 Georgia over Tennessee. And yeah, I love the under in this game, 48.5. Yeah, they'll be lucky to get to 38.5.
Yeah, I like the under, and I like Tennessee to cover the spread. All right, Jake. Mizzou, number 23 in the country. Don't know how. They will be unranked after this week, in my opinion, and I believe in yours as well. We're both big believers in the Cox. Number 21, South Carolina, 12-point favorites at home. Give me the Gamecocks all day long. I don't even think this game's close. I think South Carolina steamrolls them by, I think they're going to push a 30-point victory over Mizzou.
Yeah, give me the Cox big in this game. They're gonna come out. They're gonna dominate, and they're really gonna take it to Missouri. But no, I do think South Carolina, they're a very good team. They're much better than their record shows. I would actually be very fearful of Texas matching up against them.
I would hate
right
it.
now.
Yeah.
I would probably pick. I would maybe even pick if it's on the road. I would pick South Carolina to beat Texas.
It was a night game
now.
at South Carolina. I think Texas would lose that game.
I think it'd be a close game, but they provide so many matchup issues, and then they're very explosive on the offensive end, and they're pretty young too. By the way, the South Carolina team is not going anywhere.
No, if Texas is scheduled against them next year, it would be a game to circle for sure, because that's going to be a very fun game. And I think Lenore Sellers is as a stud. I think Rocket Sanders is a beast in the backfield. They have a very fun team for sure. Jake, in the ACC, we thought this game was going to mean something a couple weeks ago. It's close to meaning absolutely nothing. Pitt coming off of 2 straight losses. Clemson ranked number 20 in the country. They are road favorites by 10 over Pitt. I'll let you take the lead on this one. I don't even know where to start.
I'm going to place a responsible wager on Clemson in this game, a responsibly large wager on Clemson to win this game. Clemson has pretty much rolled bad teams this year for the most part.
You think Pitt's a bad team now?
Yeah, I didn't think Pitt was a good team when they were undefeated. Yeah, I figured it would come crashing down. They've been exposed. In the ACC, you can quite literally play no one for an entire season, or at least for most of the season. Mm-hmm. I think the ACC is the worst power conference.
I think the ACC are the biggest frauds. The entire conference is fraudulent, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's not one team I like in that conference, but I do think Clemson just rolls over bad teams like this, and I think they win. This will be another one of those games where you're like, is Clemson back? And then you just realize Pitt sucks.
Yeah. I'll take Clemson in the win in this one as well. I will say they get a 10-point victory. I think they hit the spread. Excuse me. All right. Got a couple more games to hit, and then we're going to mention some honorable mentions in terms of upset alerts. Number 25 in the country, Tulane, head scratcher, at Navy. They are 7-point favorites over Navy. Another head scratcher. 52.5 points for the over-under in this game. Jake, I've got Navy winning this one, and I know Navy has kind of fallen off. They lost 2 straight, including to a food group, which is Rice. You never lose to food in college football. However, I think Navy is going to get kind of back to where they were at the beginning of the season. Maybe not all the way back. They've lost a little bit of confidence, and they've kind of, hit a little bit of a speed bump. I think they can get it back with a ranked win over Tulane. Why is Tulane ranked, Jake?
I don't have an answer for you.
Why is Tulane ranked?
I'm looking at their schedule, and their best win is probably the moral victory over coming close against Kansas State,
which they lost.
Yeah, which they lost. That's probably their best win. Maybe their best win is against North Texas.
Yeah. What are they?
Here's their wins: Southeast Louisiana. Oh, that's their best win. Is the Raging Cajuns, who are a decent team this year. 41-33 earlier in the season. Yeah. Other than that, they beat South Florida, UAB, Rice, North Texas, Charlotte, and Temple.
I'm sorry.
I don't understand the ranking. I don't know why they're even getting a vote to be ranked.
I would take Texas Tech over Tulane right now, and I don't think Texas Tech is all that good. I think they're a little bit feisty.
I would take Mizzou over Tulane, and I think Mizzou has no business being ranked in the top 25. So, yeah, I don't want to spend much time on this game. Yeah. I do think Tulane will win it because I don't think Navy has a good defense, and I think that will cost them. But I'm not going to bet this game. I don't have any interest in watching Tulane. I watched them play K-State, and then I watched them disappoint against OU because, quite frankly, they're probably a better team than OU, which isn't saying much. No. And yet they still lost that game, which, again, further proves they have no business being in the rankings.
Right. All right. Lastly, Jake, Arizona State at K-State. This Arizona State team trying to play spoiler. This is a 2-loss Arizona State team, by the way. They are right there scratching at the surface of, can we possibly get in? We need some help, but can we get into that Big 12 championship game? They are not mathematically eliminated from the Big 12 championship game. And so Arizona State still fighting at K-State. K-State, a much better home team than they are an away team. 8.5-point favorites are the Wildcats over the Sun Devils. 50.5 points is the over-under on this one. For the simple fact, if this was in Arizona State, this would be my upset special. I would have Arizona State winning this game at home.
Why is Arizona State not ranked over Tulane? Serious question.
That's a great question. Who are their losses, Jake? Are you looking at their schedule right now?
Yeah, they lost a close game to Tech, and they lost to Cincinnati, who's not that good, but they dominated Oklahoma State. They beat UCF. They beat Utah. They beat KU, who's been getting better.
Playing better.
They beat Texas State, who's actually a pretty good G5 team. Then they beat Mississippi State and Wyoming. There's not any just crazy wins in that, but almost every single one of those teams is better than any Tulane win.
Yeah, almost all of them are.
They're 7-2. They might be the most underappreciated 7-2 team.
Yeah. I will take K-State in this one, Jake, because they're at home.
Yeah. If it was at Arizona State, I would take Arizona State. It's at K-State. Give me Arizona State to cover, but I do think K-State wins.
All right, Jake, some upsets that could be in the making. Sound the alarm for a couple of these teams. I've got Virginia over Notre Dame. And I think it's very possible. I think this could be another letdown game for Notre Dame. They've only got a couple more games left in the season. They're right there on the cusp of getting out of the college football playoffs. They're just holding on for dear life. They are playing better, granted. I don't know. I've got a gut feeling. I have no other reason other than to say, whenever I was looking at the games for this week's spread, I said, man, that's interesting. Why is that interesting to me? Do I think Virginia could win this game? Maybe. So I'm going to pick them to win.
Yeah. Is that at Notre Dame? Or is that not? I guess not that it matters. They typically lose their games at home.
It doesn't matter for Notre Dame. But yes, I believe it is at Notre Dame.
I could see Virginia winning that. I do think Notre Dame has been playing better football as of late. I hope they lose one of these last games because I don't want to see them in the playoff, quite frankly.
Riley Leonard is the leading rusher, by the way, for the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yeah,
He's the quarterback.
That about adds up. They get in the playoff, they're going to get their doors blown off very early on. I mean, they kind of got lucky to play A&M when they did, quite frankly. I know I talk a lot of smack on A&M. A&M's a different football team now than they were in that game.
For sure.
I think A&M would probably roll over Notre Dame now if it was played again in College Station this week, per se. But I'm just going to go ahead and say my upset special, and this will cause a little bit of an effect to the playoff. I think Boston College beats SMU.
Oh, that would end it. Yep.
And that would end SMU's hopes, other than winning the conference championship, which I think would still be in play. But that would end their hopes of a playoff, other than getting an automatic bid. And what also really just hurt the ACC and their chances to get more than one bid, because the ACC might not actually get more than one team in.
No, and honestly, in a scenario in which, say, SMU loses this Boston College game and Miami maybe slips up one more game, and you've got maybe a 2-loss Miami team who wins the conference, Jake, you're looking at maybe not even being a top 4 team.
I wouldn't put them in
the playoffs.
That scenario happens, I would take Boise State. I mean, I think Boise State would beat Miami outright.
Yeah. You're not entirely wrong.
To beat Miami, all you have to do is stop their offense 1 or 2 times.
One or two times. Right. Yeah. Easier said than done, however, still with Cam Ward.
True.
But Jake, that's going to do it for this episode, and we appreciate everybody listening in. Please give your comments in the comment section of what you think about our predictions on the Texas game, but as well as any of the other games as well. If something stood out to you, let us know. We will interact with you. We appreciate all the engagement that you do give us. Like, share, subscribe. Please share with all your friends as well. We can continue to make content for you like we do. Jake spilling water as much as he possibly can over there. He's essentially in a swimming pool, and we appreciate everybody's time. Jake, enjoy yourself at the game on Saturday. We will hear a live report. I want interviews from Sark. I want you on the sideline talking to players. I want you really working the game, Jake. All right.
Yeah, I'll do my best.
I appreciate it.
If I'm on the sideline, I'll have to be quick because I'll be running away from the.
Surely we can get Rogue Sports getting you some sideline passes, right? Like, come on, your media.
Hey, I will not say no.
Your
Rogue Sports,
media.
if you want to hook us up.
All right, Jake. That's going to do it for our show today. We appreciate it again. These episodes come out Tuesday through Friday at noon, and then we'll give our immediate reaction on Saturday. For Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns. Welcome.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.